You're about to get a masterclass on non-ejaculatory orgasms. You don't even know what's about to happen. You're going to learn all about the nervous system, how this relates to the type of orgasms you have. You're going to learn about the arousal scale, which you've probably heard of before, but how this is a complete misconception. And you're going to learn a lot of the things that are holding men back from actually achieving this. So hold on to your butts. We're going balls deep today. I'm Jonathan White, and I've helped thousands of men just like you learn to master their sexual energy and manifest their ideal lives. Men can have non-ejaculatory orgasms. This may be news to you, maybe old news to you, but you haven't achieved it or haven't found a sustainable way to achieve it. And it's okay because it's a very gray area. I first learned about this like 12 years ago, maybe longer, when I was reading some of Montauk Chia's books, but the descriptions in the books were very vague, and I was like, all these exercises that didn't really make sense to me, and I gained some understanding that the possibility was there, but it took me years to actually achieve this. And even once I first achieved it, it wasn't like something I was able to do all the time. It was kind of like, why did that happen? I don't know, but over many years, it's become very clear to me that this basically has to do with different pathways of your body's ability to experience sexual pleasure, and that most men are doing something that prevents them from being able to achieve the non-ejaculatory orgasm. So if it's not already apparent by now, the first question may be, well, why would I want to have an ejaculatory orgasm? Well, because when you ejaculate, you feel limp, depleted, unmotivated, lazy. Your hormones take a nosedive, testosterone's lowered, prolactin is released, which makes you feel lazy and a little more feminine. And you can't really have back-to-back ejaculations. Like, yeah, some can in their teenage years, but it gets harder as you get older. And basically, when you're ejaculating every time you're having sexual activity, you're basically living your life in a refractory period. You're definitely not on a hormonal high. So non-ejaculatory orgasms are the key to staying virile, having massive amounts of pleasure, and always being ready to go sexually. And also good for your vitality, because as I've talked about in other videos, excessive ejaculation is one of the #1 things that is depleting men, okay? The greatest misconception when it comes to non-ejaculatory orgasms is this concept of you must develop such a strong pelvic floor that you squeeze off the ejaculation from happening, so you have those same spasms. What I'm talking about here is going to be completely something different. So to look at this deeper, I've got some different diagrams here. I know there's a lot going on. So there's two main functions of the nervous system, two aspects of it. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm, rest and digest response. Sexual function and orgasm are really a product of the parasympathetic nervous system, whereas ejaculation is linked to the sympathetic nervous system. I'm using this red to represent the sympathetic nervous system, the tension response. We'll get into that. Whereas the blue is representing the relaxation response. And physiologically, I feel like there's some correspondence to the vagus nerve in your system. This is the relaxation pathway, right? Whereas the spine has a strong relation to the sympathetic nervous system. Now, it's not really as black and white as that, but for the sake of what I'm teaching here today, it's a helpful model to be working with. The sympathetic nervous system, when it comes to sexual function, the key word here is tension. Tension and contraction. That's what the fight or flight response is. It's a release of adrenaline. It's contracting, so you're ready to fight, you're ready to run, or you're ready to just ejaculate as quickly as you can so you can breed before a tiger eats you. And this keeps a lot of men locked in not only this model of premature ejaculation, but only being able to achieve these very fleeting, short-lived ejaculatory orgasms. And coming back to this idea of the squeeze and hold technique, where you squeeze your pelvic floor to ward off an ejaculation while still orgasming, technically yes, but you're still on this pathway. This is still the sympathetic-based pathway, because here's the thing. Your sexual pleasure is dominant in one of these nervous system pathways, either the sympathetic or the parasympathetic. And that, my friends, is what is going to determine your ability to experience non-ejaculatory orgasms and have incredible, legendary ejaculation control. It's all about your nervous system. So before we go into the relaxation response, we need to spend a bit more time asking ourselves, why are we so locked in this sympathetic fight or flight ejaculatory orgasm model? Why is this? So first of all, I want you to ask yourself the question, what is your sexual experience like right now? What I've already said, when I talk about having a tension response versus a relaxation response, which is what these correlate to, what do you feel that your sexual norm is right now? Which pathway do you feel is more dominant in your body? Do you have complete control over your ejaculation, and you have the ability to have non-ejaculatory orgasms. And if those things are not the case, then you are sympathetically dominant in your sexual function. I believe that this is the case for the vast majority of men. I would say probably 95% of men are in this, probably more, are in this sympathetic dominant pathway to sexuality. I mean, most humans in the modern world are sympathetically dominant, period. We're living in fight or flight states. This also has to do with our initial sexual experiences. Most of us learned about sex through porn. And there's also a lot of shame, a lot of like, I'm not really supposed to be doing this. I'm not supposed to be masturbating. What would my mom think? What would Jesus think? And we get it done with as quickly as possible. Plus, you're sitting on a computer, the overstimulation of porn. Like for me personally, I remember sitting on the family computer back in the early 2000s. We had dial-up internet, and it was like, I had to get it took an hour to download a 5-second pixelated clip, and I had to get that thing downloaded quick before my mom walked in on me. So you can imagine the stress I was in. And this is how most men's initial and even current sexual experiences are, because that pattern gets locked in. And so you train the body to say, okay, arousal equals there's a threat. Someone's gonna find out about me. Someone's gonna do something here. Physiologically, what this looks like is tension, specifically in the pelvic floor. If you're like me, and I want you to consider this as I'm saying this right now, do you know if your pelvic floor is relaxed or squeezing when you are having sex or masturbating? And if you don't know, I pretty much guarantee that you're in the pattern of squeezing the pelvic floor, meaning that as soon as the penis is being stimulated, the pelvic floor contracts. See how there's a sympathetic and parasympathetic pathway even in the penis. There's different nerves corresponding to different systems in the penis. And this bottom area of the penis, specifically the frenulum area, there's a connection between this and this prostate region. The nerves send a signal here. It starts to contract, contract, contract. Once it hits its maximum level of contraction, floodgates are open, you're spurting, you're ejaculating. Feels great, feels fantastic, but you've lost something. This tension response keeps you locked in that ejaculatory model. And to be doing Kegels, to be doing squeeze and hold technique, if you're happy and content with that experience, you do you. But for me, I felt like something was lacking. And once I discovered this relaxation pathway, this is where the magic happened for me. And I suspect it's gonna happen for you too as well. This is where we get to the meat of what I'm talking about here. Not only when you understand this, are you gonna have non-ejaculatory orgasms, you're gonna have full body orgasms. This is where, once again, men get things completely wrong, is because they're trying to get to a non-ejaculatory orgasm doing the things that bring them to an ejaculatory orgasm, which is being in this sympathetic dominant pathway. The relaxation response, parasympathetic, that is the multiorgasmic pathway. When you open this up as a pathway for your nervous system information, your sexual excitement, your sexual pleasure, your sexual energy to be dominant in, you mastered sexual kung fu, my friend. The focal point here is the pelvic floor. When your pelvic floor is contracting, that's drawing you, it's preparing the prostate to fire out your semen, essentially. And it means that this pathway is becoming charged, signals going to the brain saying, okay, building up, building up. The brain sends a signal saying, okay, boys, let it rip, and pew, goes down to the prostate, and pew, you ejaculate out. What if you were to open up this connection in your nervous system so that the energy that's building up in your balls, we'll say we got 2 balls here, all right, ooh, yeah, they're nicely shaped. It's building, but because you're not locked in this tension model, you can actually allow this pleasure, this excitement to move through the body. And it's connecting the nerves. The nerves branch out into the whole body. It's in your arms, it's in your legs. There's a lot of talk of this within the torso and like the yogic and the Taoist systems, Kundalini, the microcosmic orbit, but really this goes into your entire body. So now your whole body is a container to hold pleasure. I mean, you got your legs down, you got your arms. How much pleasure do you think that you could hold and withstand without ejaculating if it wasn't just your pelvic floor and balls and penis holding all of it? I mean, how much more space is that? It's a lot. Significant. Like, we all got really big dicks, but they can only hold so much tension. Your whole body, 100x the space you can hold. The excitement, the sexual energy, it's moving, but it's staying within your body, and it's just resonating. It's, it'll often loop through the pathway of your body. And this pleasure is spreading, and it's building, and it's resonating inside of yourself. It's like a sound wave. What happens if you go outside and you yell? It's a big open space. You yell, and then the sound's over. Well, what if you're in an enclosed space and you make a noise? There's a reverberation, there's an echo. The sound wave bounces off the wall and down, up everywhere. It's a difference between experiencing orgasm as a quick and sudden discharge versus a state of heightened arousal, heightened pleasure, heightened that lasts and lasts and lasts. This blue here is representing an ejaculatory orgasm. So it's this kind of quick build up, and then there's a sharp curve up. You're in really nice pleasure just for a little bit, and then drops off. It's nice. That's a discharge. That's a peak orgasm. See, it looks like a mountain. It's a peak. Whereas the non-ejaculatory orgasm, what I'm talking about here, demonstrated by the red line, it's a slower, smoother buildup. And it's like you build slowly and slowly and slowly, then it goes a bit down, it goes up more, it goes up and down. You're riding these waves of slightly heightened pleasure, but slightly heightened pleasure that's slightly heightening over a period of time. Well, eventually that increase in pleasure becomes exponential. It's slow to build, but once you're there, you can ride it indefinitely. You may have heard of the arousal scale if you've been into this work. Maybe you're brand new to this, but it's important for me to say now that this is a misconception overall. There's some truth to it. It's a decent model, but if we replace, I had arousal here. If we replace that with tension, this is a more accurate model. What's determining whether we're going over that edge, arousal is a part of it, but it's more so the tension that is happening in your body. Point of no return, PONR. Once you hit that, the ejaculation kicks in, there's nothing you can do. And so that's your point of maximum tension. It's like, okay, body's built up as much as it can hold. And this is where another misconception comes in with the non-ejaculatory orgasm, because with our arousal over time scale, this curve I've just made here makes sense. But it gets even more nuanced because you must remain below this point of no return threshold in order to experience a non-ejaculatory orgasm. Because if we ever hit this point, we're going to ejaculate. Maybe it does go a bit higher than I put here, but this is probably a pretty accurate representation for my own sexual experience. Like, the tension never gets that high. So I'm staying dominant in this parasympathetic nervous system. And of course, there's going to be maybe periods where, whoops, I went a bit too far. There's a sharper curve up here. Like, whoops, went a little high, but let's bring it back down. There we go. Sustain. Whoops, went a little bit high, but that's okay. So maybe that's more accurate. Okay, so see how we have two different things happening in the body. One is basically our pleasure and arousal, which is steadily increasing, as you can see. Generally for me, this is how it is in a session. Like, my pleasure, my arousal is steadily increasing the more I'm engaged in sexual activity. But the other part of this is the relaxation, essentially. We're maintaining the tension, because this is all about awareness of what's happening. If you go too much towards the tension response, you go sympathetic, you're on a build up towards ejaculation. But the more you can ride this relaxation response, so you start to create this new pathway in your body that the sexual pleasure is moving through, which feels extremely different. Men have a hard time with this because we're so conditioned to experience this sharp and obvious pleasure that correlates to the sympathetic nervous system, because our systems are overstimulated from porn and too much edging, too much really tense masturbation, that anything less doesn't feel as gratifying to us. So there's an adjustment process here. Your arousal and pleasure are slowly also building, and it has like a similar kind of wave. Like, it's a little up, it's a little down, it's wavy, but overall it's on an upward slope. Instead of the ejaculation buildup looks more like this, where it's just like whoop, drop off. And so this is where a lot of men run into issues, because they're maybe 10, 15 minutes into the session here, and by now they're like, well, I'd already be at this peak. Like, I'm still on a relatively low level of pleasure, because they just don't have, their nervous system's fried. They don't have the patience, they don't have the sensitivity. But if you bear with it, if you allow this to keep building and building and building over time, and this isn't always like an accurate representation of how long it takes to get there, but overall, once you're, let's say this is like 45 minutes or an hour in, you're at a level of pleasure that's well above what's happening at the point of ejaculation. So you're now sustaining a level of pleasure that's even more intense than an ejaculation. And guess what? It can pretty much go as long as you want it to. This new type of pleasure wave, it's very different, and you won't recognize it at first. And this is one of the main challenges, is that it takes patience. It's truly a process of rewiring your nervous system to experience sexual pleasure in a different way. But the more you practice this, the more you start to rewire your system, the more familiar this pathway becomes. And before you know it, like, you're experiencing tremendous levels of pleasure just every time you have sexual stimulation, whether it's with yourself or with a partner, it doesn't matter. So hopefully this makes sense. I know I dropped a lot out here, and this is it maybe seems a bit technical, but again, it's a whole paradigm shift. And this is it. And now, as far as practical steps, the obvious thing to do is to simply practice relaxing your mind and body as much as you can during sexual activity, whether that's by yourself or with a partner. And what you'll find is that you probably have some very strong patterns to contract, to squeeze your muscles, to tense up, to fantasize and try to get somewhere to disconnect from the present moment. This is your sympathetic nervous system dominant model. So practice relaxing and allowing your parasympathetic to take over. This is going to be a process, which is why, there's no single technique from oh yeah, well, you just do this and that's it. It's a process of retraining your system over time. And this is exactly what I'm teaching in my Multi-Orgasmic Man course. The system's based on over a decade of my own experience, training and research, plus the feedback of thousands of men who've gone through the training and the feedback I've gotten from them. So you could say it's a perfected system. It's a proven path. What I want you to do now is to watch my playlist on non-ejaculatory orgasms. I have an entire YouTube playlist where I talk more about non-ejaculatory orgasms. So go through those. It'll help you on your journey. And also make sure you get my ebook, which is going to help you develop legendary ejaculation control. There's a link to download it. It's free in the description of this video. It also contains access to a bonus training teaching you the sexual kung fu techniques, which I would normally sell for $97. So it will be a massive support on your journey. Give this video a like. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything about this process that you're still unsure of with the non-ejaculatory orgasms. Wishing you the best on your path. Keep it real out there, boys.